When I first started at Photopass, working with our flash units and the batteries that came with them could be a shocking experience. Literally. In the early days of Photopass, we were constantly working on improving our gear and getting upgrades, and we had some issues with some of the early gear that we got to use. We used Nikon cameras, which were fantastic. We had these wonderful speed flash units that were on every one, and we used those wherever we went. Outside, indoors, whatever the lighting conditions, we used a flash unit to make sure that there were no shadows and that you could see the guests. So we were constantly flashing our guests. Yes, that was a joke. And outdoors, it wasn't a problem at all. Working with the flash units and the generally bright sunlight that was out there, we could get some great pictures and barely strain the flash units. But when we went indoors, especially with characters, we found that the number of pictures that we were taking and how fast we were taking them would strain the flash unit's ability to recharge and be ready to take more pictures. Sometimes it was just too many too fast. They would have a hard time keeping up. Now, the flash units we used had 4 AA batteries in them, and they were good, expensive flash units. But when you're shooting a picture, every second, bang, 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 bang. And sometimes you're shooting 2 or 3 in a row within about a second. Because when we would shoot pictures of the guests with the characters, it would be a quick vertical shot, immediately turn, hit a quick horizontal shot, and we would oftentimes shoot, in that case, 2 or sometimes even 3 pictures in less than a second. With the flash units we were using at the time, and shooting hundreds and then thousands of pictures that way, it would really put a strain and a burden on the batteries. And so we were constantly trying to find ways to supplement the battery power to recharge the flash units faster and to make them last longer, because we really didn't want to be changing batteries every 45 minutes to an hour. It was be just too many. We started off using a couple little gizmos in Toontown and Character Spot and a couple other places. One was a little square battery pack that we would actually wear on our belt, and most of us would try to tuck it around behind to help keep it out of the way. It was about, yay big, probably weighed a pound or 2. It had this big long cord that would come out and then attach to the camera. I don't know where they got these packs, but I want to say they were looking for a cheap solution. We ran into all sorts of issues with these things. First off was the cord. We already had our camera with the camera strap, and then we had a cord coming out of the bottom of the camera that would go down to the PDA unit that we were wearing. So we already had this kind of setup here. Well, now we were adding another cord and another big long deal hanging off and clipping another direction, and it became very easy to get tangled up in all of these cords, especially since the one that went to the flash unit was just long enough to be a pain. It was a coiled cord that would hang everywhere you didn't want it to go, and we tried threading it through our vest, over the shoulder, around our waist, and invariably this thing would come out. And so you'd be trying to grab your camera and you're grabbing cord instead, and you pull it and yank it because it was in the way, and it just became a pain in the neck. So if you tried to put it on the other side, well, now it's getting tangled up with your PDA, and it was annoying that way. Especially if you were in a place where you had to kneel down a lot. Like the princess room, for example. If you were shooting pictures of princesses with little girls, let's just say you were getting your squats in that day, because there was lots of to be able to get down to get the picture of the little kids with the princess who had knelt down or sat down. It was just constant kneeling. When you've got this cord in the way, and then you kneel down, the cord hits the floor, drapes on the floor, and as you're shuffling around to get the picture, well, this cord had a nasty habit of getting under your foot, under your knee. Sometimes it ended up in between your legs, and so if you stood up and this cord was under your foot, next thing you know, you're doing this, because it's pulling you over. And I had more than a couple times that I shot pictures at this angle as I was falling over because of the cord. And then there was the couple times where you would stand up suddenly to get a picture and it wasn't under your foot. It had slipped between your legs, and all of a sudden you got a very unpleasant surprise while you're shooting pictures. Ooh. But probably the worst part about these battery packs, because we were moving so much and so fast and so often, and these cords were in the way and getting moved and flexed, the connections would start to get a little bit worn out and a little bit loose. If you twisted just the wrong way and you had gotten a pack that had a slightly worn cord or a bad connection, you would push the shutter button and it would zap you. Yes, it would literally shock you. Sometimes it wasn't too bad. I mean, you just kind of feel a gentle rub, but there's other times it hurt. And then you're trying to move this thing. And when you're getting constantly shocked while you're taking pictures, well, let's just say that sucks. That wasn't the worst part of these battery packs, though. As bad as the shocking would get, and then trying to fix that so you wouldn't get zapped when you're trying to take pictures, they had another problem. Again, we're shooting a lot of pictures, which means we're putting a lot of strain on those batteries and a lot of strain on the power drain from that battery pack. And it would heat them up. And they would get pretty hot sometimes. So you'd end up with like this little heater on your back. Yes, you definitely felt it. But if they overheated too much or that cord kinked a little bit and caused an issue, they had a few times that they actually caught fire. Yes, little fires on our backs with these things going up in flames. Thankfully, I never had one do that. I got a couple really good shocks. I had one heat up and I just set it off. I said, forget it, I'm just going to stay on my knees. And I put it on the ground so I didn't have to deal with that anymore. I had that a few times. But I never had one heat up where it's caught fire. But I had a couple of my friends do that. Not a good thing. They realized fairly quickly after a few months that this was not going to be a good solution. And they replaced the battery packs with a little bit different one. What we ended up with instead was a larger, longer, flatter battery that attached to a strap. I'll be honest, I think these things were actually designed to be attached to the bottom of the cameras, but they may have even been a little long for that. But we would take those things, and with the strap, we would actually kind of toss it over our shoulder. Some people would strap it around their backs, something to get it behind us, so that way we didn't have something else up in the front that we were fumbling with. And again, we still had the cord, but those cords didn't coil and stretch and do weird things. It was a little better, but it still kind of crept up in your way. So you still had another cord, and you still had this worm thing on your back that was now heavier, because they were bigger and heavier than the other batteries. Still not a good solution. Workable, but not good. And again, more stuff you're dealing with, and if you had to change out gear or change out a battery because it gone dead, it was a pain. Finally, after, I want to say a year and a half of trying to come up with a solution with the battery pack, they found an ideal one. It was called a fifth. At least that's what we called it. Now remember, our flash units used 4 AA batteries. So what this essentially did was it took off the cover that held those 4 batteries in and replaced it with a new cover that held 1 more battery. Yes, that's right. We went from 4 AA's to 5 AA's. And that was enough to allow us to get rid of these horrid battery packs that were shocking us and zapping us and setting us on fire and all sorts of other stuff. Simple solution. It didn't solve all the problems with batteries, but it did make it much easier. Now, the one thing we still did is we still went through batteries because we would shoot hundreds and thousands of pictures a lot of times pretty quickly through the course of a day. And so a round of batteries for the flash unit, 4 or 5, would typically last anywhere from 2 or 3 hours. We could make it about that long before we would have to switch it out. This was also true of the camera batteries, and so we always carried at least 1 fresh set of batteries with us. Well, our pockets were full, and if you've never seen all the gear a photographer carries, I'll post a link that'll show you all the stuff I carried and where I carried it. I would typically carry my fresh batteries down in this little pocket that was on the side of my leg. It was kind of out of the way and outside of some fast passes or maybe some brochures. It was a pocket I didn't use that much. And so I put them where I could get to them easy, and I could know that I had fresh batteries. But if I changed my batteries, I didn't want to put them back in that pocket, because I would be shooting so many pictures, I might forget that I had changed them. Honest truth, you're shooting that much, and especially as you get older, your memory goes, and what was I talking about again? Oh yeah, batteries. So when I would change my batteries, I wanted to put them in a different pocket than they had been in before. And so I would pull the batteries out of my pocket here, put them into the camera and take the used batteries, and I would put them into a shirt pocket behind my vest so that way I knew they hadn't been changed, which was great sometimes, except other times they would come out of the camera really hot. Yeah, hot. Whoo, that's a little warm. Because you were changing them quickly, you didn't want to lay them down or hold them somewhere or let them sit to cool off. You needed to get them out and then in and replaced and ready to go again so you didn't miss anything. Yeah, we got to be masters of the quick battery change. I mean, imagine changing a camera battery in less than a second. Boom, open the door, old one drops out, tuck into the pocket, tuck the new one in, shut the door, and you're shooting again. Batteries would take a little longer for the flash units. I mean, we could typically do that in about 2-3 seconds or so. But yeah, you drop these hot batteries in your pocket and whoo, they'd cool off pretty quickly, thankfully, so that wasn't usually a problem. The problem with them came when they would end up in opposite directions, and you would have batteries kind of plugging in end to end the wrong way. Then they would heat up in a hurry. And you couldn't control that necessarily, and it didn't really matter what pocket you put them in. That was a risk. And we had more than a couple photographers end up where the batteries ended up end to end, and they'd end up with this really hot spot. And yeah, it didn't take a battery pack going on fire to burn them. I came home a couple times with these really good welts because of the hot batteries. I'd hate to think what that would have been like for some certain other photographers. Ooch! This was another problem we had to find a solution for. They finally came up with one where they managed to get these sleeves that could hold 4 batteries. That was wonderful because then we could just take this sleeve. We didn't have to worry about the batteries bouncing around. We'd have one loose battery and it tended to lay alongside the sleeve. And then it was just a matter of taking the sleeve, popping it up and sliding the batteries in and taking the old ones and just dropping it. Much safer, much more convenient, and actually much quicker as well. But yeah, during the early days, those batteries were troublesome. It's something that we got to learn by trial and error to save the futures of the photographers that came after us. So if you're a Photopass photographer now and you've got those sleeves and the nice things to hold your batteries and you don't have to worry about the hot batteries on your back, well, you're welcome. We took it for you. So that's a quick look at some of the shocking ways that we had to deal with batteries in the past. I'd love to hear your thoughts about other gear issues that you may have seen or other questions. Please don't hesitate to leave them in the comments below, along with issues you may have seen photographers have. I'd love to hear it. Thank you so much to my patrons as well. Your support is incredible. If you want to know more about Patreon and supporting me, or about my fan pages, the group pages, Reddit, Discord, the gear I use, or anything like that, please check the description below. It'll have all that information plus so much more, including merchandise and other things like that. Thank you so much for watching, and God bless. Because we would shoot, when we get the pose shot, it would be a quick boom, boom, turn the camera. Because when we have the people pose, because when we had the guests pose with the characters, it would be a quick vertical, turn it, hit a quick, oh my goodness, I can't get these words out. And what we ended up with instead was one that was actually attached. How do you attach something? I don't know. If you want to know whenever I have a new video out, well, hey, make sure you hit that button right there and subscribe. If you want to see another video right now, well, I've got a great one right here for you. And if you want to be like these wonderful people here and help support me financially on Patreon, well, check out that link right there and it'll take you to it. Thanks so much, and God bless.